Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. We are going to be starting a week's worth of Halloween projects for you. It's getting to be that time of the year. The Halloween candy is already out at the supermarket, so it's time to start thinking about our Halloween projects. We are going to start with a full quilt kit for you. We did one of these last year when my book came out, Fat Quarter Patchwork Quilts, and we had it come out like right in October, right when the book arrived, and using a Halloween collection. So this time we're going to give you a little bit more time. The collection is super adorable. We have made a digital version so you guys can see what it looks like, and we're going to take a peek at the fabrics here in just a second. But the tutorial walks you through everything you need to know. Everything is strip piece almost, and so this goes together really fast, and is a great one for showing off really fun fabric prints because you get to have them be big. So you can really see the colors, the designs, and this is a great collection to do it with. It's called Ghost Town by Dana Willard for FIGO Fabrics. We've had Dana Willard several times before as our featured designer for Stashing with Stephanie, and also just in some holiday seasonal collections. She always comes up with the cutest stuff. You may know her from Made Every Day, a very popular YouTube channel. So she comes up with great stuff, and we can have some fun with her collection here. Now, the pattern Dot Dash is in my book, Fat Quarter Patchwork Quilts. It's one of the patterns that was only ever released in the book. If you're a Stashing with Stephanie member, you can get that for 30% off over on our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. And if you get it from us, not only will you be supporting us more than if you got it on Amazon, because if you buy it on Amazon or from somebody else, we get like a couple of cents for that, for every copy that's sold. I think it's something like 30 cents. But if you get it from us, we get to keep about half of that purchase price, so it better supports us being able to bring you more video content for free, but also I'll sign it for you. So make sure you grab that so that way you've got it ready to go. And that's, by the way, sold separately because we know a lot of you guys already have that, and you may want to just get this kit because you're inspired. So let's take a look at what's in the kit, and then we have two fabrics that we just left off to the side that are part of the collection but are not part of the kit. So this would make great backing fabric, or if you want to make something that's coordinated to go with it, go ahead and grab those. Now, I personally love it when pink is included in a Halloween collection. It makes it so fun and flirty, and so whenever we have a little bit of pink or purple in there, it just makes my heart happy for Halloween. This one, we have a pink background with little bats flying all around, and they're in all the colors that we're going to see as we go through the rest of the collection. This is a fun one too. It's patterned dots, again with that pink background, but again colors that we're going to see later. This is not black. It is like a very deep blue that we do see later on. It looks really fun together. Next up, we're in our orange section. We have a very, very light orange background with little orange teardrops going through. It's going to make a nice little blender to have your focus be on the more substantive prints. This one is super cute. It's little cats wearing witch hats, and it's not really directional. So it's going to work perfect when we are strip piecing these. We've got a little orange geometric floral. I love prints like this because they really just are their own blenders within the lines. You don't have to find something that matches perfectly. The colors already do. They coordinate with the imagery, but it just helps prints like the cat print and the bat print shine. This one is really adorable. We have a very deep Halloween orange for the background and just little ghosts with all different kinds of faces floating around. And then we also see that little black teardrop shape to kind of tie it in with some of the other prints. Here's that ghost print again, this time in a nice medium blue background. Here's that geometric floral again, this time in black and blue. Here's that dot print again. The background is kind of like a charcoal with blue undertones. It's really gorgeous. We have more bats again, this time on a black background using all the colors that we've seen so far in the collection. It's really fun and gonna look great in those big squares. Here's that bat print we started out with, just with a black background. And we're gonna wrap up with that teardrop with the black background and kind of a blue-gray teardrop. I want to give you guys a look too at the two prints that we did not include in the kit. Since we're using a white background, we wanted to make sure that we included prints that were going to stand out really well. So that's all of these. These though won't stand out too well against a white background. So we left these on their own. You can purchase yardage of them. I think they would make fun bindings, good backing fabrics that coordinate. This is just a good one to have in your stash, that white with the with the black teardrops. That could be used anytime on any quilt. It would be absolutely gorgeous. But this one will be really fun trick-or-treat bags. Possibilities are endless. So you're going to want to grab 5.5 yards of either of these prints if you want to make sure to have enough backing to match with the quilt kit that we put together for the twin size. All right, we also have a video tutorial that shows you how I quilted spider webs, so make sure you check that out as well, and let's head on over to watch the replay of Dot Dash. All right, so this one is really fun because it is mostly strip pieced, which makes it go pretty fast. Now we got a little excited when we were sewing these together, and I've already strip pieced this top part together, but I'm going to show you strip piecing the bottom because there are some tips and tricks, even if you know how to strip piece. Now, when I design our patterns, we do it assuming you're going to have 21 inches of usable width from the edge of the selvage to the fold, and you can get that in most fabrics as long as you don't pre-wash your fat quarters, and 17.5 inches of usable width going this way. So that, again, typically you can get as long as somebody hasn't shorted you big time, which whenever we cut ours, we cut them to 18.5 inches so that you definitely get what you pay for and you can get everything you need out of it. But because we need exactly 21 inches, I want to make sure that I am sewing and keeping my selvages all together on the same side. And I want to do my best to line them up. That way I can cut all the way from side to side, because let's say we've got a fat selvage here. And if I did one way and one the other, I've got more than 21 inches from here to my fold. But if I've got one going the opposite direction, then I'm going to be losing a full inch here. And so you might not have enough in order to do what you need to do for this quilt. So just make sure that you've got all of your selvages on one side. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just flip this right sides together, and I'm just going to stitch down using a 1/4 inch seam, keeping those together. I don't ever pin this. It kind of defeats the point of it being fast for strip piecing if you take the time to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and stitch it and make sure my edges are lined up as I go. All right, so as I do this, I'm just kind of lifting up and I'm getting my edges lined up, whatever will fit on the sewing machine. So I just kind of hold that in place with my fingers and go ahead and let that go until I can't hold on any longer. And then at that point, I'm going to reline up my edges, just get those edges nice and lined up, and keep on going until I've got my entire piece stripped together. Now, when you get to the end, your pieces might not be the same length. That's totally fine. As long as you're going to have at least that 21 inches, don't worry about it. Now, what I recommend you guys do, because you have a lot of these to do, is chain piece. So you're just going to lift up, slide the next one under, and keep on going until you get everything together. I'm just doing the one for this video, so we're going to go ahead and break thread and get this pressed open. So I almost always press my seams open. To do that, I just put my fingers in the middle, and I just keep my fingers down a few inches ahead of the iron, and that sort of finger presses it open, makes it really easy to just slide the tip of your iron straight down that seam. This makes it really great flat block when you're all done, and it also gives you really unlimited possibilities for quilting because you don't really have any bulky seams that you have to avoid. When I'm all done, I'm going to go ahead and flip that over, and it should be nice and straight. If you see like a little wiggle on the back, that means you pressed a pleat in and you're going to need to straighten that out. But what I like to do is also press it from this side as well, and that just makes it super, super flat. All right, so I've got my pieces put out now. We're going to have 2 shorter strips and 1 wider strip, and they're each going to have one of our background strips that is very skinny in between. So now we've got to get these all joined to our center. I'm just going to go ahead and do this one first. Again, make sure that the selvages are all on the same side, so you're going to make sure you've got your 21 inches of usable width when everything is ready to be cut apart. All right, we're just going to keep strip piecing, and just like we did, and press them open, and then we're going to get ready to cut this apart. So when I get to this point where I pressed everything open, I like to give everything a spritz with my spray mister. It's like stuck on. What happened here? Like we need a new one. We have dropped it too many times. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that a good press. And that little bit of spray mist keeps me from having to put water in my iron, because every iron I've ever put water in eventually spits and makes your fabric gross. And I like to keep this one nice. I've had it for 5 years, it's still going strong. And that just helps me get a really super flat seam, which is again going to make great flat blocks and also make it a lot easier to cut everything apart next when we create our strip piece units. All right, so I told you earlier, we're gonna need all 21 inches from the edge of our selvage to the edge of the fabric here. This is my shortest section, so I wanna measure and make sure I've got that. And I do, I've got a little bit less than 21.5. But what I do when I cut these, when I need exactly 21, is I always start on the end that is not the selvage. Because if we need to get like a little bit of the selvage in, that's gonna be okay. Because as long as it's less than 1/4 inch of the selvage, one, you're still working with regular quilting fabric, it just has a printed selvage on it, and two, it'll be hidden in the seam allowance. But if you run out over here, like there is no more fabric, you're SOL. We don't want that. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna just square up this edge, because all my strips are a little bit different length, and we wanna start off with a nice square piece. So I've got an inch line even with my seam allowances here, and I'm going over as far as I can so that I'm nice and even with where the edge of this short strip here is, and then I'm going to go ahead and give that a trim. Let's get that out of the way. All right, now I'm going to turn it around so my cut edge is on the left, because I'm right-handed, so I'm going to cut on this side. Now we need to cut 2 larger pieces and 4 smaller pieces. The measurement for that is in the book, so you can grab that on our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. It's called Fat Quarter Patchwork Quilts, so you can get a signed copy from us. So that would be a great way to say thanks for all the free tutorials. So I'm going to go ahead and get this lined up, and you want to, this is definitely a measure twice, cut once situation, because if you are off on your cutting, then you are not going to have enough to do your quilt. So be very careful and just be mindful when you're cutting. Don't rush through this step. All right, so just like when I was squaring up, I'm making sure to have an inch line even with the top here, and then I'm nice and even with the measurement I need to cut to on the left here. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to put my palm flat on the ruler with my pinky to the side. That's going to help keep the ruler from slipping while I cut. And I'm able to just go ahead and give that a trim. Now we've got to do that again. We need a second one of those. Now I need my 4 smaller ones. All right, as you can see, we do not have a lot left here. It would be enough if, like, say your piecing got off a little bit, you weren't super straight when you strip piece, you will be able to straighten it up maybe once or twice, but you gotta be really careful because there is not wiggle room. You're just gonna be grabbing more fat quarters if you mess that up, because you're not gonna have enough. So we're ready now to start assembling our block, because it's super fast because we strip pieced all the components to the big main vertical rows. So this part is what I think is most fun, and that's when you get to mix it up with the other strip piece units. What I try to do whenever I make a quilt like this, or I'm giving advice to one of my team members when they're making a quilt like this, is to just make sure that you are mixing it up, like you are having different color values in there. This is a good one where we have like kind of a light, a medium, and a dark. This one we have 2 darks and a light, a dark, and probably 2 mediums here. And it really is just going to let the eye go all around the place. And then when you're putting it together, if you try to make sure that you are not repeating if you can, or if you do repeat, that it's not right next to it. Like it would be okay to have this in again, as long as it was maybe like in one of the corners. And it really will make your quilt look very scrappy, even if you have worked entirely from one line like we do in all the quilts in this book. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and stitch our sashing strips to the pieces here, and then we're going to be ready to join everything together, because this is just so fast of a block. It goes so quick. Now I've got to press these open. And it's the same process as when we were pressing the strip piece open, except instead of just gliding my iron down, I'm going to lift and press because I don't want to accidentally get any of these seams going the wrong way, as we want them to stay nice and flat as we work. When I'm done from the one side, I'm going to go ahead and give it a flip, and this time I can just go straight down that seam and get it nice and flat. All right, so now we've got our pieces ready to sew to our center. There's one tiny little tricky bit here, but it's not hard. You just kind of pay attention as you're sewing. So we want to make sure that these pieces are lined up both on the top and bottom and on both sides, because that is what is going to make it look like it's a continuous piece, even though it's definitely chopped up into different bits. Like this is obviously a different piece than this, and then we've got a different piece in between here. So what makes it a little challenging is if I just flip this right sides together, I can't see that seam because there is a little bit in between there with that sashing strip. So what I like to do is I'm going to flip over this middle piece here, and I'm going to line up a ruler with my seam, and then I'm just going to take a friction gel pen, which will go away with heat, and I'm just going to extend that seam line up. That way when I'm pinning, I can really clearly see where those bits should be. And we'll zoom in when we get to that part so you can see me pinning and using this guide to make sure everything is in the right spot. All right, so I've got my line here that extends up from the seam, so I know right where the center of that seam is. And I can use that to line it up with my actual seam on the other part. So I'm just working to make sure that this is lined up right with the center of where that joint is. And I'm just going to put a pin on the right side of that seam allowance for both sides here. Then when I sew, I'm able to stitch until I'm in the first half of that seam allowance. Then I can take my pins out and I'm good to keep going the rest of the way. And that will allow me to really make sure that everything looks like it's right in alignment, even though I didn't have a seam to line it up with. I'm going to go ahead and give this a press. Again, it's really important to make sure you are lifting and pressing when you do this, as we got a lot of seams at this point. We don't want anything to get flipped going the wrong way. All right, everything's looking really good. Those lines that I drew are totally gone from the heat. Everything looks really aligned from this side. Let's take a peek. Oh, that looks really good. Everything is going right straight through. It just looks fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and press from this side, and then we'll join our other side on. Same way, mark our seams and then go. One note, if you are marking on the same surface that you're ironing, you might want to move because the friction gel pen goes away with heat, so you might have a hard time actually getting your marks on if you put it on, say, a hot pressing surface, because it's going to want to go away immediately. So I'm going to go ahead and press and mark, sew, and press, and then we are almost done with this block. Make sure you follow the instructions in your book to learn how to create this sashing and cornerstone strip. It's just strip piecing like we did to create our sections of our block. It's just you have a really tiny strip and then a very long strip, and it makes it go very, very fast. All right, so now all I have to do is attach this to the bottom of my block and we're done. We're good to go. Let's just match these seams and go ahead and sew. Now, whenever I'm pinning a strip like this, sometimes your block can get to be a slightly different size if you didn't press quite right, or maybe you didn't cut quite right, or maybe your 1/4 inch seam wasn't quite right. So what I'll do is I'll pin at that juncture there where the seams come together. Then I'm going to match up my corners. I'm going to pin here as well. Now the rest of this, we don't really have to line anything up, but what I do is I like to give it a grasp and then just pull it taut, and then I'll walk my fingers in to find my center, and then I can pin there. And then from the rest of it, I can just give it a nice little bit of tension just to straighten those edges out, keep everything nice and even on the side edges, and we're gonna have a block that fits together really well. So when I'm all done with my block, the last step I do is I'll give it a good spray with my spray mister. And I'm just going to go over that with the iron. Now I'm not going to iron this like a shirt because we don't want to warp the block. But I am going to make sure that I'm going across all the parts. And you can see already, like, this bottom half looks so much flatter than the top half because we really took that time, got it really nice and flat. And this is going to make it so much easier to join your blocks. They're going to lay really nice if it takes a little bit between when you finish your blocks and get your quilt sewn together. I'm guilty of that many times. And then you will be good to go. So this is it. The block just looks fantastic. And I'm just gonna real quick go grab a couple extra blocks so you can kind of see what this looks like when it comes together, because this forms a really cool secondary design. I want you guys to see it. All right, so I grabbed some extra blocks. I'm not gonna sew them together here on camera because we gotta figure out the best scrappiest layout, and we haven't done that yet. But you can see that when you put this together, when we have our different cornerstones and those tiny or the smaller little squares come together with the tiny one in the center, it creates that secondary design of this cool little 5-patch. And so you're going to see that throughout the entire quilt, and it just looks so fun. And what you want to do when you put it together is just mix it up as much as you can. Like, I probably wouldn't in the end keep these next to each other because this is the same print and I feel like that's too close. But it looks really cute, it's really fun, and it really goes very fast. Like, when you look at it, it looks like you're cutting a whole bunch of tiny pieces and rectangles and then bigger pieces, but it's not. You're going to strip piece, you're going to cut it apart, you're going to sew it back together, and it's going to look fabulous when it is all done. And this is just such a fun quilt. It's a great way to show off the fabric, and especially when you have a lot of those medium and dark value prints, you put it next to a light background, and it's really fun. I hope you enjoyed this. The pattern is exclusive to my book, Fat Quarter Patchwork Quilts, which is now available. You can get a signed copy from our website, so make sure you go and grab that. One other tip I'm going to leave you with is when you are pinning your rows together, I would do the trick where you mark the backs. That way you can continue to have this going all the way across and it doesn't look like jagged, because that wouldn't look so good. But this looks very good, looks very fun, creates a really fun quilt, but not a ton of time committed in order to making it happen. So we can definitely maybe get the top done at least before Halloween, and then you can enjoy it quilted for next year. So stay tuned. We're going to do a quilting video on this as well. I'm going to quilt spider webs. So I'm very excited about that. And then we're gonna do some loop-de-loops in order to join our spider webs. So it'll look like a spider just spun its web across the entire quilt. I think it's gonna be super fun. I'm gonna use light pink thread. I'm very excited. Can you tell? I'm very excited about this quilting plan. I don't normally get super excited about quilting plans, but this is very different than what I normally do. I think it's gonna be perfect for this quilt. So check it out. Everything is over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Join our email list there. You can get 10% off your first purchase, including brand new stuff like this. And until next time, happy quilting.